How's it
Doing my
going, boys? Welcome back to Joe something. I don't know. You're watching a picture of Arthur Morgan, my profile picture in Siege.
Oh, we are mentioning it. Okay.
Oh, well, yeah, we're gonna bring it up. It's great. I think the picture of Arthur Morgan really helps for the topic today.
It
Um,
really does.
yeah, really does. So,
It's
Harpo's back. This
hi.
isn't his episode though.
No, that
Um,
was last week.
yeah. That was the last one. That was last. Well, it'll be 2 weeks ago by the time this goes up. I missed a week
Oh,
because I just got back from my trip. Everyone knows about it. I think I mentioned it in the last episode, which is doing the best so far. You're a draw, Harbor Gaming.
let's go. No, I think it's just the podcast picking up.
Maybe, hopefully. But we're back again. We're gonna be talking about a certain SMP that ran from September third. I like to start SMPs on the third of a month to March something, middle of March. It's called the new was actually called JO3 SP Season 2. But it was called the New World SMP. And this is
New
opening
world,
the
new
door
world.
to any discussion. New World, yeah. We've been wanting to talk about this. We've talked about this a lot, but we wanted to like talk about it in some sort of setting. So for those who are curious, could like get thoughts. This isn't gonna be like just a bashing of anyone outright. We'll probably
Yeah,
mention people, but
we
like,
fully expect someone to get upset at some point
oh,
and be like,
definitely.
"Oh, you're trying to cause drama." No, I think this is literally just me and you have talked a lot about just things that happen on New World, and I know me. Oh, I have at least in my chat. I've been asked a lot of questions about what happened.
I probably would if I ever streamed, but that's besides the point. But yeah, this isn't meant to be like an attack on anyone. We might mention somebody negatively or positively. It's not meant to be some sort of attack. It's literally just our recap of our perspectives of New World. And anyone else that was a part could literally give theirs, and I would respect it and help support it because everyone's perspective deserves to be heard on it. As two of the admins, well, owner and an admin, and then two of the writers, I think this is a good perspective to start. And then, like I said, anyone wants to, they can support it. I'll retweet it on the New World account if they put it out there. All that fun jazz. I think a good way to start is just to talk about the beginning, and go through sort of chronologically with events. Not necessarily going over every story beat, but like sort of segmented in like arcs, kinda. I think is a good way to do this. So we start with what I wrote. No,
No,
no, we
no,
don't.
you start with the nothing.
We start with the nothing actually. So JO3 SMP Season 2, as it was at the time, was literally meant not to be a lore SMP. It's meant to be what Forgotten Falls SMP is now, the current SMP that we both do, which
Ooh,
is in a lore server based, whatever you want to call it, more just like survival. There's
it,
technically like factions, uh, stuff
it's
like that.
vaguely RP
Vague,
survival.
yes,
Vague RP survival is the best way to describe it.
very vague, but yeah, that's a pretty good summary of it. So that was originally what this was meant to be, and then the oh hey, lore is an option because I know it's season 2 to a lore server. You can do this if you want, and then I mean at this point it was I was like really down to do it, and shout out to uh it was Wild's idea. Shout out to Wild Aces on doing it because honestly I was down to do it. It was his idea to make it a lore server, or at least bring lore. And I really like what he did. It was his idea. I'll give him full credit to bring JO3 SMP characters into the second season and make it an actual continuation, kind of like a multiverse type thing. We were the Minecraft version of the MCU. Uh, that was the thing he immediately started formulating. I was like, that sounds sick. Let's roll with it. So he showed up after the dragon fight, which is very fitting because that's how JO3 SMP ended, was the dragon fight. So now we begin the server with the dragon fight. Go into it. Immediately, things. Well, we didn't really have a plan, which is very apparent because Wild was supposed to be from JO3 SMP. No one else was, and then everyone else was except me. So that was cool. Um, that was different. That changed everything completely. It goes to show we didn't have a plan, which is fine. Harper wasn't in it yet, so it's kind of hard for
No,
him to
I was
speak. He is
here.
just playing
Um,
Siege.
yeah. Well, okay. Well, if you want to know, I think it was like right after. It was a little bit after. I think it was a week after you started doing lore. I saw it, and then I think I made a mention to you, Joe, because it was like what early October then.
We
I think.
were getting towards the first big event. I think like the Flower Ball. I think it was
Yeah.
around like just before or just after it.
Yeah, so it was like around like I think it was like right before, right after the Flower Ball, we talked about. I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of want to join. So do I go through the whole? Let's get to the recap. Like, we go through the reason why it took me so long to join.
Yeah, yeah,
Is that
yeah, yeah. We'll just
the
we'll just we'll
topic
just
on its
keep
own?
going here. Yeah. So the flower ball is the first big one. That's where we were starting to find our groove. I really like this time of New World. Where everyone was sort of collaborating on the story. But generally it was me and Wild kind of making like the end all be all decisions at this point. Um, we were just and then we usually took everyone's input and we'd be in VCs for a long while with everyone. It wasn't just me and Wild. At this point, usually. So up to the flower ball that started the whole story of like Flower, Bread, and Wild, who all did great in their roles. I'm gonna give props to anyone when they deserve it, and a lot of people deserve props. If pretty much everyone deserves props for their work, especially around then. Like Zank did a good job with his role. Flower did a good job with their role. Wild is great. I'll give him that. He can be the guy. He can be Ender Aces very well. Which was also kind of not planned at first to bring in Enderfall's characters, and then I was like, hey, let's give Enderfalls and JO3 SMP an ending, which was supposed to lead to the end of this first arc, where Flower got kicked out of that trio. The we JO3 New World JO3 and Flower team up with everyone, take back the kingdom. We had Bread basically like it came off just it was a standstill 1v6, not the greatest idea, just because he had Wild's armor. It's kind of a slight regret in hindsight, because now it made him like practically seem invincible. Probably not smart.
Yeah,
Um,
you power scale a little too hard there.
little too hard there. And then a decision I kind of think didn't fit as much as the alternative. Flower killing Wild, and Wild wasn't supposed to die there
No, I
originally.
have.
You have a
Oh,
rant
I have
about
some
this.
words. I have some words
Let
about
me
this.
finish the recap, and you can rant. It's quick. Yeah, originally I pitched for me to be the one to do it because that gives Ender Falls an ending for JO3 to take out Ender Aces. Um, but pretty much all the other writers at the time disagreed, which is why it didn't happen. Everyone wanted to see Flower do it because that made more sense for the New World story. But I disagree because I was still trying to tell a trilogy at that point. Um, and I think you like stick to it more than the other writers, which is fine inherently. But I this is where the first of many differing opinions on where to take the story. I would say it's kind of the real beginning of that shift.
You see, okay, but I'm gonna disagree with you there. Of Flower being the better choice for
Oh, I said it. I disagree with it. I don't think it was a
no,
better
no, I
choice.
mean like even for the New World story,
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah, feel
Because
free.
so inherently, right, the JO3 character, the point of it was, right, it was destined to become Tyrant Joe if it continued down the
That
bad
was
path it
what I
was
was going
going.
for. Yeah.
And you had, old characters who knew the bad versions of Joe coming in and be like, hey, don't do that because this is what this evil version of you,
Yeah, for
right?
context, in case somebody's new, Tyrant Joe is the character I played on the original JO3 SMP. He was the antagonistic leader of the server.
So
Uh,
intrinsically, right, the focus is on, okay, well, how are we going to react when, like at least at the beginning. Of course, main characters shift over time, and it
yes,
kind of shifted to being like a cast main. But like the way you wrote it, because you write in a very very pungent like story like book style.
yes.
Um, J- New World JO3 was very clearly the protagonist.
At
Um,
that point, I guess so. Yeah.
Flower was coming up as like you could tell like they're saying Flower to be like a protagonist in like the next arc, right, or be something big in the next arc. Like that was being
Right.
built up because you had all this like backstory being built and you had a lot of character development.
Mm,
That's why JO3 is a good first arc
right.
character because you didn't need that backstory. It was like, oh well, the last SMP, like that's what happens if he doesn't be good. Um,
Yes.
and so you have Evil Wild now, right?
Good old Ender
Which
Aces. Yeah.
yeah, Ender Aces.
Yeah.
Which original season one Wild was I guess Wild Senior, Wild whatever, whatever you want
It's
to call it.
confusing. Yeah. Multiverse. Yeah. JO3 SMP Wild, Wild Senior, whatever.
Yeah. You had that Wild who was helping Joe first, and then flipped evil and then did all the bad stuff with Joe. No, Joe's that
Yeah.
whole thing. Um,
Right.
it's exactly how it happened. You can look up in
Yes.
the
Yes.
script
Yes.
because like that.
Definitely. Definitely.
But if that Joe, if Joe's able to kill that Wild, right? It puts him on the same path that the good version of Joe from Ender Falls, which we brought Ender Falls in with this, it mirrors that Joe more. Which Ender Falls Joe was the good Joe, right? So you have like this
Yes.
dynamic of Tyrant Joe and Ender Falls Joe, both of which are the opposites of the same coin.
Yes.
A few choices, the characters would have been the same.
Yes.
The Tyrant Joe leans onto the evil side,
Kind
Ender
of.
Falls Joe leans onto the good side.
Yes.
So it would have made more sense intrinsically, and would have completed Joe's arc where he could have fallen back to be a complete side character because his arc would have been complete, and you could do a lot more with the character now moving forward. That have him kill Ender Aces,
Mm-hmm.
not only to avenge Ender Falls Joe, right, but to like complete that arc of like, okay, he's not going to become evil. And it gives a reason for all the returning JO3 SMP season 1 characters to trust Joe. They have a reason
Right.
now. They see that he's not going to become Tyrant Joe, and
Right.
it just creates a more, because Flower didn't need to get the kill, right? Because Flower's grievances
I
was
do
that
agree with
Flower got
that.
kicked out of their kingdom.
Yeah, I do agree with
They
that.
them getting the kill there after, they already had their kingdom back from the revolution, puts them to like just be just like there's not really a necessary motivation for the kill because taking a life is like a heavy thing. Like I know it's video game, right? But like in a story, taking a life is it's a big thing. Like that's a
Yes,
huge thing to do.
it is.
Um, and sure, I am advocating here for Joe to do it, but that's just Joe's doing it against there's more precedent for Joe. I think Joe has a more personal hatred to Wild rather than, oh, you took my land
Right.
and cast me out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I will also say, I was the reason Enraces got back through my research sort of shtick. I created the beam,
Yeah,
Harper's
so like
favorite thing,
you
um,
you created
temporarily at least,
yeah,
and
but like
I
you were
created the
the
villain, so it made sense
yeah,
for me
you
to,
created him.
yeah,
He was
inherently.
your villain. Inherently, you were the one
Yeah,
create him.
I agree with you. That's why that was the point I made, but everyone else disagreed, which is why it went the way it did, which I don't think made as much sense for the idea of ending off Ender Falls, because that was what the first arc was meant to do. Was end off Ender Falls, and then of course Ender Aces stayed along. In hindsight, think that was a bad idea, but we can get into that once we continue on more. Um, Inherently, so Flower gets the kill. This would allow this should, if we go this route, set Flower up to go through a sort of arc where they come to terms with that and try to better themselves as a person, or fall into a negative character arc. And moving forward, we can move forward to the next sort of plot of the story, which was a more uh pushing towards Evergreen, which was an idea of Wild's, which inherently was a good idea. It allowed him to make a new character finally that wasn't like just super serious. Wild the second, which is why JO3 SMP Wild was called Wild Senior. Well, he never really called him Wild Senior, but he could be called Wild Senior or Wild the First, whatever. Probably what we'll refer to him as just for simplicity. For the rest of this podcast. But Wild the Second, which is a childlike character who he can actually have some fun with. He was going to lead Evergreen with some new characters, bring in a bunch of new characters.
And also had an aggressively dark backstory.
Yeah, it did. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, he has the original place known as Havenfall, which never got to see the light of day on JO3 SMP. At least during the story. Yeah, it got attacked, and they're all that's left. Um, yeah. Anyways, yeah, this is where you come in. You want to tell
yeah.
your
This
story now?
is. Oh, I can go all the way back. Okay, so
Yeah, go
obviously
for
I
it.
asked Joe early October, like, hey, oh yeah, I would go ahead and give some trigger warnings for death. Um,
Oh,
just pop
okay.
those in real quick. Well, I gotta talk about why I did Joey right away. We gotta have that all in there.
We
We
were
got a
talking
little.
about Wild Di. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
originally, I was set like I think Joe and me were talking about me joining I think it was
Uh,
before the beam was even used and Ender Aces existed yet.
no, it was after.
It,
It was just after that. It was around the time of the flower ball.
no, no,
Like,
when we originally talked, like
oh,
originally.
oh, the idea of you joining before you actually
Yeah,
wanted to. Oh, okay, okay, yeah,
I think it was like that early October time, roughly late
yeah.
September.
Probably around the time
Um,
it was used because that was the first big story event.
yeah, because I was like,
Kind of,
we were talking. I was
kind of
like,
big.
yeah. I told him I didn't really want to do a survival SMP, because I didn't. I didn't care to do one.
Yeah,
And so they're like, "Oh yeah, okay, we're gonna get you in." Well, then a good friend of mine, who'd been battling cancer all of his life, ended up tragically losing his fight, right?
yeah,
And so obviously, I want to take some time off. The day after my friend lost his fight, my other friend had to go to the hospital for being dehydrated, and I was
yeah.
there overnight. Joe knows because I kept calling him. I
Yes,
was like, Joe,
and
I don't know
vouch,
what's going on.
and vouch.
Um, so like I had two. You think, oh well, that's two very tragic things that happened one right after each other. Well, then the next week, my uncle died.
Yeah,
The uncle helped raise me and all that. So like I was not in a position to want to do haha funny Minecraft SMP for a little bit there.
yeah,
So we delayed that for a little bit. Um, then from delaying that, it made it so when I eventually wanted to join, there's a lot more pushback because at that point it wasn't just Joe writing.
yeah.
Um,
Which I mean, it never fully was. Admittedly, it was me and Wild at first. It was more so like I guess I was the one that put pen to paper verbal. I guess verbally, we didn't actually write anything down that much, which was probably a mistake. It was a mistake. Um, but generally, it was yeah. By the time it was actually like we were pitching ideas. It was me, and three other people was the writing team at the time. Um, so yeah, there was a bit more push on what to do with him as a character. And I mean, you could explain your character since I never got
yeah.
to see the
So
full fruition.
originally
Fruition,
I was
yeah.
gonna play a full new character, right?
Originally,
And then Ender Falls was brought in a little bit, and so I was gonna do like because this is way before Wild was even supposed to die.
well,
Um,
yeah, he wasn't supposed to die when he did. Either way, yeah. Guess I should explain that a little bit, but I can do that after your story.
so well, yeah, I guess I mean we can go talk about it a little bit now. Wild had spooky, scary computer virus,
The spooky,
so
scary
like
computer virus, so we killed him off when we
yeah,
did. Originally, he was
yeah,
just supposed to be trapped and escape, and the story sort of prolonged a bit before he eventually died. That was the original plan,
yeah.
basically.
So we were just like just like oh we don't know how long he's gonna be out of commission because
Yeah,
all that fun stuff. But so we did that. Um,
yeah,
and so I was originally my original character after because originally before it was just gonna be new Harpo, new character. But I decided since Enderfalls is open, I can give my character as well. Give Enderfalls a true proper send off, right? But I didn't want to be just my Enderfalls character. I was going to be both the Enderfalls character and the JO3 Harpo at the same time. And there's like a little spiral donut island I was originally going to be introduced on.
yeah.
Um,
It saw the light of day once.
yeah, saw the light of day once. But originally I was going to be introduced on that. I even rebuilt. I built up the Harporium and a priest from the Church of Dr. Pepper, which were like two very integral things to the they're two very integral things to the Enderfalls character, and that's because there's already the church from the JO3 SMP that was integral to that character. So like it was a perfect place for me to be introduced at. Um,
Yeah, or yeah, originally he was supposed to be up there when I got teleported there. That's part of our little machine thing.
yeah, but then that got pushed back.
Yeah, and then things
It was like
changed a bit.
yeah,
Yeah,
things changed because like oh well, Ender Ace is good.
yeah.
Should just adjust my story. I I still don't understand why we didn't just go with that still.
I don't
With me
quite
still being
know
up there.
either, because that could have given me something to do if
Well, because
Evergreen hadn't happened.
in my mind, it doesn't affect um
Anything else that was planned.
anything else if
Yeah.
I'm there. Like
Besides, he just wouldn't
the
have been
only
at
connection, well, the only connection with Ender Aces that I had was I was gonna like that gets into like actually talk about my entire like planned storyline was going to be,
Right.
and I don't necessarily want to talk about that yet
Okay. Fair
because
enough.
I like I'll wait till we get through so we can talk about like in one big chunk.
Right. Once we
Um,
get through what did ultimately happen in the ending that was planned, was kind of thought about it a little bit, uh, and ultimately ended up being the end of the SMP, kinda.
yeah,
But
so
yeah,
after so after that got scrapped, it then came down to like, oh, okay, well, how do we and there's like a bajillion and four different ideas thrown around.
incorporate you, yeah.
Um, most of them were shot down. One of them was that I could just somewhere.
Oh, yeah, he was
And
gonna be in the end at one point. I know that.
I was gonna just be in the end at one point. And that got shut down because like, oh, well, we're not using the end for. And
For
then there's another point where it's just gonna be like, oh, well, you can just. I was like, oh, I can just be in the woods, and that got shut down because it's like, oh, well, no, we want to introduce you into the story, which
yeah,
I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna shoot on this right now. I think that's the worst excuse I was given because both Trentacles and Lunar were just randomly found them in the.
yeah. Shout out Discord cutting out occasionally, but they get the point. They were
Yeah,
randomly
they get the
around.
point. They're
Yeah,
randomly in the woods. Why
yeah,
couldn't I randomly be in the woods? That makes no sense. There's a lot of things
yeah.
that don't make sense with
Well,
riding around.
I'm gonna give some credit, but also some issues here. There was Wild is great, but when he has his eyes set on an idea, he's dead set on it, and it takes a lot of convincing to get him off. It
Oh
was
yeah, no,
ultimately Wild's idea to kind of have him be part of Evergreen. It was originally his idea. I was like, oh, that could be cool, I guess. I just wanted to get you introduced. I'm gonna be honest at that point.
no, I'll be honest. I didn't want to be a part of Evergreen in
Oh,
the
I know.
slightest.
Yeah, then yeah,
I didn't. Yeah, we'll get to my story, but
yeah,
it really didn't fit to the story I had planned with my character because I was going to be purely side story. I was coming
right,
in just to do some background build up, like build up the world itself and like
right.
explain something, which I was doing. I was like asking people about
You
the
were starting.
SMP
Yeah,
they're
you were
from.
there. Yeah,
I was trying to build up the multiverse thing along with also telling this story I had planned.
right.
And the original pitch I got for Evergreen was that it was going to be like a mafia,
Mm-hmm.
and I was
That
going to
was
be
the
a
original
part of the
plan.
mafia.
Yeah, it was like a mafia style place, and I also disagreed with that. I was like, I don't know if that fits.
So eventually, the
Which,
mafia part got dropped.
yeah, kind of, yeah. Well, I mean, they still wore suits. That's as far as they got to a mafia. Was
Yeah.
everyone
Oh, I
else
can
wore
get
suits?
my second shooting part here.
Oh,
So yeah, because it actually ties in directly with how I was introduced.
okay.
So any other time someone's unavailable for a stream, usually we'd
Mm.
ask around see if there's any other days that worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I was introduced, it was the one day in that week before because I was about to leave for a week to go into a conference in Indianapolis,
Yeah.
right? And so it was the one day I worked between the time that we announced that we were going to do the stream and when I left, right?
Yeah.
The one day that I could not do, and I said, "Hey, I can't. I work." Radio silence from everyone about rescheduling it completely, and then it just went on ahead, and the event just happened just without me being there.
I can give some context behind this. I would literally, I was DMing, I think the only other admin on was Wild. I was like, hey, do we want to push this back? He's kind of important and we need to get him introduced. And it was just kind of, I guess, a case of we just need to get this done and introduce him later, which I didn't really agree with, but at this
You
point, I was
see,
already kind of
but like
getting to the point of not caring, admittedly.
yeah, I mean, but like my thing there too is like, okay, move it a day before, a day after, if like you need to get done. Just see if those days work. Because my issue is more that no one asked.
Yeah, no, I get that fully.
Um, like no one was like, oh, are you available like these days or whatever. I, let me read the exact message I sent because it's not that far of a
Okay.
scroll up. Because
While you scroll, I also want to defend a thing here, which admittedly I did not when we were there. A big argument around this time, or not really argument, I guess more of a mostly good debate, was how much we wanted to include Enderfalls and JO3 stuff amongst some of the other writers, because a lot of people wanted to just move on and tell our own story, and I was for a while fighting that. I was like, hey, if we're gonna do a trilogy, we need to keep mentioning this stuff, and they were like, no, we need to do new things, we need to move on. And eventually, I just caved, which I shouldn't have, and I would like to say I regret that with hindsight. That hey, yeah, let's just move on. Yeah, let's just not like bring up these other SMPs, which then were still brought up by other people quite a bit. Not I'm not gonna call out names, but they were either through a character or through a mention. I did as well, but I already said yeah, I'm going to, especially with my talks with Harpo's character, which was some of the best work at the time, in my opinion. A lot of evergreen stuff though I think was genuinely pretty good stuff. Lavender did some decent stuff as well, although Lavender Town was
Okay.
also kind of completely unplanned to me. Um, I can save my story about that if you want to continue yours.
Well, yeah, because that comes after. I will say the only thing I did say was I worked till about 8 9:30 EST.
Yeah,
Um, so I said so no. Also, I would like to point out that Misk also said that it's a little bit of a risky time, so they're not fully guaranteed either.
yeah,
Originally, like they said the day after. I'm just trying to get back to
yeah. You're good.
well, let's see time wise. Okay, so it was asked Monday, right? So it wasn't like it was a whole lot of like
Right,
head time anyways to like get everyone ready for anything. Um
right.
it was asked Monday and then it was then pushed on to just Milk saying the next day, that Tuesday, um, it's a risky time. It's like I should be, but maybe not.
Yeah,
Which in my mind it should be a oh hey, let's see what other times work
yeah,
and other days. But there was radio silence.
yeah,
um
yeah. It was probably one of the less great admin moves at the time. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Which I mean like
it's
mistakes happen. Like I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
gonna I'm not putting anyone on blast. I will just say it really bothered me, but mistakes
right,
happen.
right.
Um
Yeah, and then eventually, I think a couple weeks later, because you had your conference and all that, we finally got you introduced, and then you immediately
I
became
think
one of the most intriguing characters to the viewers.
it took a little bit. It took me getting back into because I had COVID right after. I said the word. Sorry
That's
about that.
fine. I don't
Uh,
have any monetization anyway.
okay, you're right. Okay, so I had COVID right after the conference.
Yeah,
Who would have guessed going to a big city during a pandemic would give you COVID?
that's fine.
It's fine. Uh, I learned things there. That's all that matters. Um, so like I was out of commission even longer. The other, I guess, I should also explain more of why it bothered.
Yeah,
Was like the entirety of my Christmas break to really do some fun lore things,
yeah,
and I couldn't because of the way everything worked.
right. Uh, yeah. This was a rough time because I think it was also sort of a transition from Joe being there to Joe no longer giving a fuck. Um, so I think I both was kind of should have gave more fuck, especially when it came to Harpo's debacle there. Probably should have stepped in and be like, hey, yeah, we gotta move this. Um, but this is also around the time when Lavender just happened and I didn't know about it beforehand. Like I knew like there was an idea that Flower wanted to move towns with Smokey, who had been introduced to this point, and like Saturn and Jules, all of that crew. Um, which they were always meant to be like a group. That was planned, but it wasn't planned necessarily for them to lead the Flower Kingdom. And it just kind of happened. I was like, oh, okay. I thought we were going to discuss this a bit more beforehand, and then Lavender was just built. Um, in creative, as all things were. Yeah, that's an issue for after we recap our thoughts on the story, though. And it just kind of happened, and it kind of irked me the wrong way. I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, clearly they're just gonna do things. and I don't really agree with that style of doing things. So I'm just gonna like distance myself for a few, and then I never stopped distancing myself because I just got tired of it.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was fun. The idea of the joint evergreen, I think I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it was originally mine, and then Wild was on board with it. So that's the next story thing. If we want to get back to that,
Yeah, I mean,
um,
I'm not. I remember it went from being mafia thing to Wild's like fake kid mayor dude because I think I convinced Wild not to do mafia thing because I told him I still want
yeah,
story and it did not make any sense if I was his like
we had a
mafioso.
decently long discussion. I think over multiple different calls about what
Oh, I
Evergreen
didn't
was
know.
ultimately going to be, and you were, I think you had talked
Not
with
in any
him.
of the calls.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was
Which
on Rod
I
Chat,
mean, I could.
which
I'm
yeah,
gonna explain some of that. A lot of the me not being in calls just because it's got to happen a lot in high in conference here. I was at college. I could do calls if I was told ahead of time, but if I wasn't,
a lot of
you know,
calls were
I
planned ahead of time. Yeah,
I lived on a college campus, so I would be out doing things,
yeah.
or I'd be in the middle of something, and I wouldn't have this
That was
because I was.
our absolute biggest issue was meetings just happening off the cuff and never really being planned.
Yeah.
Which I think is just a change, like a differing lifestyle sort of thing, which should have been handled a bit better. But most meetings were just kind of off the cuff generally. And yeah, ultimately I joined Evergreen. I think it was the right decision for the way the story is going, even though it was not what I would have done with the story. If I was just like the sole writer or whatever. But that's part of not being the sole writer, I guess.
Yeah, you
Um,
gotta make compromises.
yeah,
It,
I was still interested in the story, even if I was sort of annoyed of some decisions, because at the end of the day, we're a writing team, at least sometimes a team. Um, so I joined Evergreen. Flowers' character was kind of dealing with Enderaces still, which I still think was a bad decision to keep around. I think the idea of Enderaces, with hindsight, being like Flowers' inner psyche would have been more interesting than what ultimately happened, just because I feel like we never made rules when it came to the living communicating with the afterlife, which is something that was risky in itself, but we never wrote out concrete rules for anything like that, or magic for that matter, which is one of the biggest mistakes. And another spot I should have put my foot down because a lot of the other members did not want to make concrete rules, which is I think what brought us in the downward spiral that we'll get to shortly. But Flowers' character gets upset, assumes I'm doing something bad because Enderace has said so, and that leads us into my little activities with you, Bodhi, and all that. Our
I will
side.
say that does still bother me the way that played out too.
Oh, yeah, no, it
Um,
bothers me too.
because I felt I mean like it could just be me nitpicking, but I really felt like Flower switched up on how they felt because keep in mind this I mean the whole flower Wild haunting Flower would have worked a lot better if Joe killed Wild. Um, my opinion.
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
but like keep in mind
that's your opinion,
this is
yeah.
the same person that murdered Wild in cold blood. Um, like just straight up just murdered him.
Right.
Uh, is now fully listening to him.
I do think that was an issue with it, that it didn't make
I
a lot of sense.
yeah
Um, I do think that it could have been done better. There's a lot of things around this time that could have been done better. I think Bread and Flowers, like, making up should have been longer and been more drama filled. I think that was a missed opportunity to just do.
yeah. Well, I mean, especially since again, would it be as big of an issue if Wild was not killed by Flower? But this is Bread did side with the person that Flower killed in cold blood. Had the
Right.
motivation to commit murder for.
Yeah, I do think that caused some issues. I think it would have made more sense if Flower maybe hadn't, or if we had played more onto that traumatizing event. I think that was another missed
Yeah.
opportunity from the writing team, myself included. When I say the writing team, I'm including myself here.
Well, everyone's included. When you say the
Um,
writing team, it's you,
it's
me,
every
Wildflower.
yeah at this point. Yeah, that was the main writing team at this
Yeah.
point. Everyone. Um, so where was I? I joined Evergreen. let's see. You had begun. Lunar had been introduced at this point. You helped Trendicles be introduced. You were the only
Yeah,
one that knew
I
what
mean,
Trendicles was. That's
yeah.
important
Well,
for
when Lunar
later.
was introduced, I also just randomly showed up.
You do
I
randomly
remember
show
that.
up sometimes,
Well, because
unplanned.
to be fair, I DM'd you because I knew you were in VC with Wild. I asked you two if it was okay, which technically, with the way that the writing team worked, you really only needed a 3-4 vote. Um,
Right.
you know, so I asked you
We'll
two
get to
because
that.
I think Flower was said that they were busy. I think like beforehand. I can't remember where Flower was, but I'm pretty sure Flower was busy to my recollection. I can't remember if they
Mm,
said that they were busy or they were streaming, so I couldn't just DM them and ask them. Like they're streaming something else, so I couldn't just DM them and ask them. I think.
right.
Um, and then I knew you two were, and I asked you. You said yes. Um, and then
For Lunar? Because I
yeah,
said,
for
yeah,
Lunar.
okay,
You
yeah.
just
I said
randomly
yes
showed
to
to
that.
Lunar, and
Yeah.
then I also randomly like I DM Lunar and
Yeah.
asked Lunar before I showed up, so it wasn't just like a surprise thing.
Yeah, right. I think it worked. You built intrigue. I think you were one of the more intriguing characters, and I think it's just
Um,
because of the history there. You finally brought to the surface that we had tried to ignore. Well, some of us.
I think like that, and like I was also really like trying to build up like because I asked a lot about Lunar's home, right?
Right.
Like what their world was like. I was asking that a lot because I was really trying to build up the fact like,
And that
hey,
was completely open. That was something we never really dabbled into. That and Origins, which I really wanted to do more with, is like there were people from other worlds that are just not known, and we really like it gave them free reign to be creative with that.
yeah,
I think Lunar did a good job. I'll give a lot of props to Lunar. They did like real world research on their power, like for their powers and stuff as well. I'm gonna give Lunar a lot of props.
all right, no, Lunar did great.
Yeah.
Um, that was actually like something that I wrote in my story originally, the original draft of it. That I'll get into after we get done with the recap.
Okay. Yeah. So you were that was all sort of going down. We're not going in like in a particular order with all these events, but that happened. I met Bodhi with Wild. You were kind of like his surrogate father at this point. That was pretty obvious. I know we had a stream where we went to like Fort Wenderpog and a lot of old places and saw like where Merrick supposedly died and a bunch of
Yeah,
other stuff. That was a really fun stream. A lot of backstory stuff. I do think it was very
that was
different pacing compared to what everyone else was doing at the time. It's
yeah.
just
Well,
very dark and
I
very
think that
serious.
too. Well, that's because my story itself, like the whole
Yeah,
story I was trying to tell, was a very.
yeah,
I'll get into it later. I'll get into it later.
yeah. It'll save most of it
Yeah,
for later.
yeah. Gotta
Yeah.
save it. Gotta save it.
Um, but yeah, that ended up happening. I ended up training with you and Bodhi because we brought it. We started thinking about like the combat side of things. Because we had planned. Well, actually, went through like 5 different versions. The fall of Evergreen / war between Evergreen and Lavender. Well, it was a war at one point. I
Mm.
still think it should have been. The original version paired everyone that was in Evergreen, like normally, plus Bread as a hired assassin or hitman or
Mm.
mercenary specifically, against Lavender Town. We realized they would get crushed, and we're supposed to lose at least the first battle. So we
Yeah.
swapped some things around. Bread and Flour
Which
ended up making
anyone
up.
who's like I will say to clarify, this is the same bread that took on a 1v.
Yes, but so Bread only ended up swapping sides. We had Milk's betrayal, which I think could have been built up a little bit more, but it wasn't bad. Milk did a good job with what he was given. Um, it was, with his sort of relationship thing with Flower they wanted to do, which I mean, fair enough. It didn't. It gave him a motivation to swap sides, and it gave us a motivation to actually lose the first fight, because otherwise we were kind of out. They were outmanned. Lavender Town. So
Yeah,
originally that was how we're gonna lose the first fight. We are gonna bounce back with an attack, and then ultimately it was gonna be like crushing Evergreen, just so we had sort of complete Flower's sort of negative arc, or at least it should have been a negative arc, but there was a lot of fighting about that. In Flower's character. A lot of disagreements there, but we can save that for after the recap. So the ultimate outcome of the fall of Evergreen, after a lot of discussion, and I did not agree with this decision, uh, was to just have it be one fight and pretty much just be a sneak attack and Evergreen getting destroyed, or at least parts of Evergreen. Originally, it was not supposed to be any of the houses. It was just supposed to be like a sneak attack, a planned out attack by Lavender Town to destroy key parts of Evergreen that would cripple us practically. It was meant to be like a practical sneak attack, and then originally we were supposed to strike back, and then it became, oh, they strike us down. And then the idea of New World JO3 dying came up by me, admittedly, and I was like, hey, yeah, let's do this, and I can bring back Tyrant Joe. I think that'd be interesting, and set up a antagonist, because everyone was kind of morally gray. Not, I mean, Evergreen less or so. It was pretty obvious we were just a village living, but Lavender
Yeah,
Town's
you
very
see,
gray.
I will say at this point, I could not be like in this story. My character could not be the villain. It's just a depressed man who was looking out for his surrogate son.
Yeah. So I was
Like,
like, hey, I'll bring back Tyrant Joe. I wanted to flesh out that character because Tyrant Joe isn't actually that bad of a guy. He's just a stupid, terrible leader. Uh,
he was a bad guy with the right motivations.
he had the right motivations and went about it the worst way. Yeah.
Yeah, bad
Um,
guy for good motivations.
yeah. So I was gonna bring him back. Sort of the idea, which I had some videos and stuff, some backstory since we sort of changed time. Kind of, we did a little bit of time manipulation, not time machine. But at the beginning where it would to bring back Ender Ace. So the idea was I stopped in that as well. I stopped Wild Senior from killing Tyrant Joe on JO3 SP. Little time bullshit. It was that's what it is. Time with bullshit. There's the line. So inherently that sort of leaves that Tyrant Joe in a limbo until he's able to take my place because I died. And then the way I died was kind of how it was supposed to go, kind of not. We can get back into that real quick before moving on to Tyrant Joe and what was supposed to happen to end New
Yeah,
World.
let's. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
like the way
let's.
that was good. The Smokey dying, that was always the plan.
That was always the
Um,
plan. Who killed Smokey was sort of up for
that
debate.
bounced around.
Yeah,
At first, before like we didn't have anything like planned with Bodhi. I don't think we had even introduced Bodhi yet. And that was the name
originally
being
no.
thrown, and I was like, maybe we should see how he. Because I was very practical. I was like, I wanted to have him be introduced first before we like decide. Oh
Yes,
yeah, let's have him kill a major character.
yes,
Because there's if the character didn't hit, character doesn't hit, and you can't have them do something that major.
right.
Like that happens sometimes where like it just doesn't feel right because you don't know how someone's gonna present a character in SMP until they do it.
Yes,
So it was like like we should probably wait to see how the character is presented, how the mannerisms of the character, and like would they realistically be seen as someone who'd probably do it, especially since he was supposed to be retired. I was kind of like in the mindset like,
yeah,
well,
he was a
maybe
retired assassin.
it's like
Actually,
maybe he doesn't want to do killing anymore. Like maybe he,
right.
he's a changed man, sort of thing. I was like, character played.
Mhm.
Um, like then we were kind of left in the holes. Like, okay, well then who can do it? I could theoretically do it. I don't think I was the best choice. I think I was a good backup in case someone like desperately couldn't show up.
Right,
And then I think the other name that I threw around was like, well, why don't I just like hire Trentacles as security for the birthday party? And
right.
then
Because Trentacles was gonna be kind of like a. He had the piglin origin. He liked gold. He was raised by piglins, and was
yeah,
gonna
he's
be
gonna be a
like
mercenary.
a mercenary as well. Yeah,
That never got used,
yeah.
but
It
that
never
was
got
the plan.
used. Yeah, and ultimately we decided on Bodhi being the one to do it because Bodhi did well. I'll give Bodhi
Yeah,
props as
yeah,
well.
but and the
Um,
mannerism like matched too. Of
yeah,
like, okay, yeah, this person could
could do it.
realistically
Yeah.
do it.
Um, and of course I was supposed to die. Flower was supposed to get the killing blow. Everything was kind of going well. They blew up houses, which wasn't the original plan. To fully like destroy Evergreen. All that was really left was the tavern, Wild's house, and the stables next to the tavern. That wasn't the plan. They were supposed to hit the windmill, the farms, the boat, the statue originally, and then it was kind of fought back about the statue, which I mean doesn't make the most sense, but whatever. Um, and like the key
Yeah, I think
points.
I will say the fight back against it. I still don't understand because
We
the
could have
argument was like, oh well, my character wouldn't like destroying that because the story behind it, but this is also the same person that's murdered someone.
Yeah, and it's kind of
over a
lost their
town.
mind.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like they became more crazy, but becoming more crazy, slightly more moral.
yeah, which doesn't make much sense.
And I could see it maybe if there's more development to it. But there's the point where things start getting rushed.
Yeah. So they attack. We were having Sherp's birthday party, which I think was great. Honestly, most of the funny stuff with Evergreen was the most fun I had at that server. Just being able to mess around was great. I wish we did more of it, honestly, and didn't rush things because it was a lot of fun. So that happened. Me and Wild got, or not Wild, Wild the second went with Bodhi to Bodhi's house, and then Bodhi looped back around. And then you flew off, had your discussion with Smokey. I snuck up. Bodhi killed Smokey. You left. Flower and their crew came over. Flower started attacking me. We had a little bit of a fight. I was about to kill them by accident. We would have just had to go with it because I don't know. It was a very interesting fight. Because they were supposed to jump me, right away, and then Flower's crew just didn't until like I finally said get them or get him, and then they jump me, they kill me, um, leave, and that was supposed to be that with the fall of Evergreen. That was not how I expected it to go whatsoever, but that's what happened. I
That's
was
pretty much
expecting
where
more of a
story stopped.
pretty much. That's where I was expecting a war. That's why I thought it was going to be the next build up thing. The issue with that is next, Tyrant Joe showed up. And I think the first stream was great. It was just reintroducing him going around the map. He had a couple of videos as well to build up. Those are still on the New World channel. If you wish to watch them on YouTube, New World SMP or the New World SMP, something like that. Those were there. I had that fun callback of Barry B making it to his third SMP. Now he's on 4 because he made Forgotten Falls somehow.
Let's go.
Time Lord Barry
Well, I mean,
B.
so did APW referee Barrick Eric.
We don't talk about Barrack Eric. Um, so that ended up happening, and since Ender Races was around, Wild had the idea of Ender Races, Tyrant Joe, and Season 1 Harpo teaming up, the three big villains, to finally have Flower see some consequences. This was the Flower story. That's pretty
Well,
much
no,
what I learned from this.
before that, even it was just gonna be you and me.
It was just gonna be me, yeah, you and me, and then like
Um,
Woody maybe, and maybe Wild the second, but not really. This is when we started talking about ending it to do a season 2 because originally we were gonna do New World season 2, with a very big tonal shift with how we are gonna do and how we are gonna do things as well. Um, so this changed like 7 or 8 different times the ending or like the ending arc. Um, but originally I was gonna kill Child Wild as Tyrant Joe and use the star, which we haven't actually mentioned up to this point. That's shocking. Which would grant a wish
Star.
at the cost of a great consequence, which was going to be trapping Tyrant Joe in the void. That was originally what was going to happen. He was going to use it to reset the world. Be the guy be like, you guys caused all this war. I'm giving you one more chance. I wish for the world to be reset. New World Season 2. And it wasn't going to be actually the same exact world. It was going to be a different world with ruins from New World. Kind of like how it had New World SMP had ruins from JO3 SMP and Enderfalls SMP. The timeline's very confusing, but it's fine. It changed to I think the next big change, like some minor stuff changed, but the next big change was me and you teaming up.
Yeah, because I was like,
Uh,
you're talking about using the star. I was like, well, Joe, you might want someone with you. I was like, my character literally worshipped the beam, which is in the star now. Well, half the
Practically,
character.
yeah, kinda, yeah,
And it was also gonna make Joe a lot more detestable because he did just hijack a kid that was a dude's father.
yeah. It was gonna make him be more morally evil. Even if once again, kinda good intentions.
Yeah,
So,
but like,
which is the inherent character of the Tyrant Joe. Um, which was going to be a plan. Ultimately, I think I was still going to end up using the wish to reset the world. That was the reset idea was way before then, which honestly was the worst thing to happen to the SMP. I'll stand by that. Out of anything, was the idea of resetting the world because resets kill servers. Um,
yeah,
and It made it obvious. That's why no one played survival, which I mean there are other reasons as well, which we'll get to. And the reason nobody really wanted to do any side story stuff for the last like 3 months at New World,
I
because
tried.
we
I want
had
to
the
be known.
idea of a
I DM'd
reset.
people.
You did, yeah.
I DM'd so many people. I was like, "Hey, you want to do this?"
So
One response I got was just my character just sits there and stares,
yeah,
and then that was the only response I got on it. I
yeah,
asked if they wanted to change that, and then nothing. So
yeah, yep. And then that was okay. One more thing happened. I met Ender Aces at the ruins of Evergreen. We decided to
oh
team
yeah,
up for whatever reason. Yeah.
and
And
then for some reason killed me for questionable purposes.
yeah, this is the final big shift. It was gonna be me and Ender Aces. For some reason, we were killing off Harpo.
I argued against it
Um,
literally for hours.
it still didn't make sense to me. I just did not care at this point. I was beyond not
Yeah,
caring.
this was like
Um,
I think I argued with Wild for like hours, and then I finally just said, "Fine, whatever. I don't care anymore." My arguments against it, if anyone wants to know, I never got to fully complete my story, which I could get into right after this. Um,
right.
and he was like, "Oh, well, we could just say there was a time jump, and you just do it within then." But it still didn't work out in any sense of the word
Yeah.
to have it end there, which would have been fine if people were available and we didn't rush things. Still,
Yeah.
um,
Oh yeah. No, it was completely rushed. Yeah.
Uh, and also the argument was like, oh well, why would Harpo be okay with Ender Aces? But I would love to point out that the end of Ender Falls, Harpo did not have any grievances against Ender Aces. It was pretty much a good job, you won.
Yeah. When we ended
Um,
Ender Falls. Yeah.
yeah, which was the canon point of we just kind of shifted the ending, the original like planned out ending, and just be like, oh well, then Wild just killed everyone after that.
Yeah.
Um,
Wild
but
used
I
his
didn't
power
know
that.
that, so like I didn't really have a reason to be angered.
Yeah.
Um,
As far as you knew, you were just in an ocean monument living your life on Ender
yeah,
Falls. Yeah.
so I still don't get it.
I don't either. There were some other issues with the story around this time, like a church randomly popping up and Wild Senior randomly showing up again. Wasn't planned whatsoever. Um, Nothing on the Lavender side was really planned, at least planned with me. Um, so so much for our team. Um, so at that point, we killed Harpo off. That was the last lore event, at least on our side, to happen. I think one or two more streams happened with others. And then we started preparing to do a more cinematic, like pre-recorded ending. Because I said, my mind, if we're gonna end this, because I'm definitely not doing a season 2 at this point. We were already talking about Forgotten Falls, or at least coming up sort of with the concept completely. I was like, listen, we're not doing a season 2. We're gonna give it at least a decent ending, whether it be through editing or whatever. So we started planning out the ending. I think this was probably mid-February. It took about a month till New World actually ended. Um, so we had the idea of, okay, Milk and Flower had a wedding, or they're gonna have a wedding. Let's have that be the climactic event since we didn't get to it. With me and Ender Aces, since that's all we had left, using the star while they were having their wedding. They were all distracted. We'd go to the floating island, which was at one point was going to be called Blackburn. Then it didn't have a name. The Spiral Island there. It's meant to be like the center point of the SMP, quote unquote, where we use the star to reset the world, or whatever. Me and Enrace are gonna do that. Intertwined, like cut with Flower and Milk's wedding, where Flower, because they inherited Enderace's abilities, which would slowly whittle away at a person, was going to die at the end of their wedding, as the world reset. That was going to be the ending, kind of, and generally. This is just a quick gist of it, of New World SMP. Nowhere near the ending I would have expected, but that was the ending that we ultimately were gonna go with.
Yeah.
Then, some things happened. Um, Pertaining to some drama behind the scenes. Sum it up quickly. Somebody got operator. I was already pissed that people were just handing out creative, which had been an issue for a long while. Admittedly, it was started with some buttons. Should never even got to that. It should have been only admin / writers having creative. Should have never gone past that. Won't ever go past that on a server I own again. Somebody got operator, or handed somebody operator. I was annoyed because that sets, a new sort of line where, okay, we're just hanging out operator now when needed. I was like, hey, you could have DM'd me instead. It escalated and escalated for some reason. I said, fuck this. I'm tired of this toxic ass shit, and ended the server.
I will say I can take credit here because Joe just asked me if I was fine with it. I my exact words were, Joe, if it's taking that much of a toll on your mental health, just do it.
Yeah, I was done. I was done before then, but I was really done at that point. I was like, fuck this. I
Yeah,
own
but like
this.
that
I
was
pay
like,
for it. Fuck it. Yeah. So, um, that was the end of New World SMP. I made some tweets
yeah.
saying thanking everyone for their time. Um, we put out the written version of the planned ending. A couple members got upset for some reason, saying they were going to do their own ending. My argument was, okay, let's let the fans at least have the canon ending out there. I don't know why you wanted us to private. They wanted us to private the ending. It was on a doc. It was on a Google Doc. And my argument was, why? Your ending's going to be different. It's not like it takes away from your ending. It gives the viewers some closure. Ultimately, we just said fuck it and did for a bit, and then they never did their ending, so we eventually put it back up.
Yeah. Now I remember during that entire situation, I called you both stupid. I got in VCs with both of you and called you both stupid for different
Mm-hmm.
reasons, but I
Uh-huh.
still did it.
Yeah,
Um,
you and Wild both got me in a call.
yeah. Well, and then I talked with the person you argued with afterwards, one on
Mm-hmm.
one, which is the first time we ever talked one on one, despite me trying to solve issues that we had
Yeah, I didn't even
one on
mention
one.
that it took weeks to come up with the same ending we already had over a dispute.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll never
somebody
get.
did somebody didn't like the ending. And then we had the exact same ending, but they wrote it out in their words, but it was the exact same ending. Generally, minus maybe a detail or two or change about the wedding. That was
But
it.
I can finally talk about my story now.
You can, yeah.
So the entire point of my story was going to be a dive into grief, right?
Yes.
And what that does to somebody who's not the most mentally sane,
Right.
because neither of the Harpo characters were from either Ender Falls or Joe SMP.
Right.
Um, neither of them were anywhere near sane. Um,
Right.
so going down that route, the original plan before Wild got killed was me and Wild were gonna make up because we're the only two Ender Falls characters, and we're gonna be
Yes.
the only two Ender Falls characters, and we're gonna my entire arc was gonna happen while he was still alive because he it was set to happen and it worked out perfectly while he was alive. I was going to have an episode for each stage of grief. I later changed that because I realized, oh crap, we're rushing like crazy, so I need to just combine some, whatever, combine some stuff so that it worked out fine. I got the first episode out after Wild died. I changed a lot, obviously, because Wild was dead now. So now it's going to be pretty much a solo thing with not much talking, just very calm and different. Just going through the different motions, trying to show those emotions in the camera movement and how
Right.
I was making all that work through the music choice.
Right.
Um, which I think I did well in that first episode of Denial. Um,
I think so, yeah.
and then the next episode, it was delayed for a little bit because uh, the next episode was going to be with Smokey. It was delayed for a little bit because Smokey was on vacation. Then Smokey came back. I recorded that bit, and I realized it's kind of short. I could combine it with because it's supposed to go to Lunar next,
Mm-hmm.
and so like I'll combine it with Lunar, right? Well, this is also around the same time that Lunar was taking a break from anything like on the SMP that they're still on the SMP, they're still doing story things, but not anything that related to death for a bit,
So no main
right?
story, thanks, pretty much.
No, you can still do main story thing. There's still stuff you can do,
Not a
right?
lot, but yes.
But you couldn't get involved in a storyline completely about grief. So I had to push that off because next natural step was going to Lunar.
Yeah.
Um, so I was pushing that off, and then the SMP ended, and also I died. So I stopped caring.
Yeah.
Then after that, I was actually going to the next episode was going to be me walking Wild through, Wild the second, Wild Junior, walking him through stories of his father, right? And that was gonna lead
Mm-hmm.
my character to realize, The same thing that Erwin Smith told all of those. I can't say that that's an Attack on Titan spoiler. But a thing, realizing, the value of someone's life doesn't come, specifically from them being alive, but from being able to, keep their memories alive and, keep them in your, both in your mind and in actions. You like let their lives have affected yours, right? That was
Mhm.
gonna be like the takeaway from it, you know.
Right.
That was going to be a very somber, sweet thing. It was just it needed time because it's a very serious storyline, and it was a
Yeah.
very like I needed to do it right to do it justice.
Right.
And it just took time, and it didn't help that a lot of people were just unavailable. Which no dog at them, people, but it
Mm.
definitely did delay things, which still would have been fine if we didn't rush the story so hard.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about it. Except we're going to. Um.
Yeah,
Yeah. As soon as like the shift in writing happened, the story just like the pacing went way too quick, and I was constantly trying to push for like, hey, we should build this. We should build this. We should build this. Why during Evergreen there's still a lot. There was like some decent amount of build to things because you
well,
need
okay.
build.
The biggest showing of it is the ending, right?
Yes.
Like I think I mentioned a few things we could have done for the ending, and they're all well, yeah, but then build that.
Mm.
It's like, yes, let's build
You
it.
need to, yeah, you need to build. Because
Um,
it's literally a setup moments. The last few streams, you could tell, it went from Fall of Evergreen, kind of with a little bit of build from Lavender's side, not really, just a little bit, to immediately Tyron Joe being back, which made some sense from my point of view, but others should have been like reacting to the Fall of Evergreen, which didn't really happen. We didn't really get
yeah,
to
there
see that.
there wasn't breathing room.
Yeah, and
Um,
then Tyron Joe media races, killing Harpo, and then it would have been the ending.
like I think a lot of the issues came from just like some things not being the most well written that they could have been.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that felt like it was like, oh well, there should be, because one of the big things of writing, especially in a digital form in a long format, is like
Mhm.
you need breathing room.
Yes.
Not only because it's better for like letting viewers catch up to what's gone out. 'Cause that's a big thing of why you want to do breathing room, a stream sort of setting. Because I remember we had a lore analyst, but they could never get caught up with lore because we had so many big events happening one right after the other.
Right.
So they never actually, I don't think they ever actually ended up getting caught up with lore
No.
in any meaningful way.
No. Not at all.
Um,
Which I mean, we had to keep a pace because for a while we kept a pace and they weren't even able to really keep up that. But at the end, I fully understand them not being able to keep up because it was just big event after big event after big event, and which wasn't ideal. I will say that. Like while I was going through Tyrant Joe stuff, everyone else should have been reacting to the Fall Evergreen and doing their stuff as well. I think that's the other thing is there was always just like one perspective and there was always just one sort of story going when there really shouldn't have been. It should have been a breathing world of different stories going on. The other issue, back to Killing Harpo, was it cut off like half the server that was active at the time. Trendicles now knew no one. Only Wild I think knew the location of Lunar, maybe Flower. Um,
and then there's no one alive that knew where
Bodhi was,
Bodhi
yeah, or
was, or
Wild the
Wild the
second,
second.
yeah. They were
Yeah.
locked in a
So
bunker, so
Wild the second, Bodhi and Trendicles were cut off from the action of
completely,
having
yeah.
my character die. It would have been fine if only me. It also like it came so soon after Joe died, and there's no build up to my character dying,
Oh yeah,
and no resolution to any of the arcs that he was in.
yeah. If I knew it
Whether
was
that
gonna
was
happen, I wouldn't have brought back Tyrant Joe, and I wouldn't have died. Because it cut off Bodhi and cut off a lot of people. But even then, it still would have cut off Trendicles, and that was the issue. Is it cut off characters because nobody else knew of them? That was the issue with Killing Harpo. He was an intrinsic character, even if not necessarily the main character or a main character. He was
oh no,
so
I was nowhere
important.
near a main character. I was like the Obi-Wan Kenobi, I would say, vaguely like an important scale, right? Where like I'm an important character. I'm talking about prequels Obi-Wan, not like Ben, because Ben wasn't really that consequential to the story other than being mentor that had it, right?
Yeah,
But I'm talking more of like, prequels where he wasn't really needed. Like he didn't need Obi for them to work.
I mean, you could
right?
replace him with any other master. Yeah.
You didn't have to like you could cut it a lot of what he was doing out, you know.
Mm.
Like, did he impact the main story? Yes, but he wasn't necessary to it, right? His character wasn't quintessential to it.
I would say after episode
Um,
1, yeah.
yeah. Um, and like, I guess Iroh would be a better choice
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
choice. Yeah, Iroh, because like Iroh's important. Did a lot of good side stuff. We didn't need him. Like he helped Zuko out, but like you could argue that Wild Junior or even New World JO3 was my Zuko.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I was giving advice out. I was like raising Wild, and I was helping you not go down the path of the two evil versions of you I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, evil to you, yeah. Only one of them was actually evil. But,
yeah, yeah, but still, like I was like,
yeah. It,
um, and there's no build to it. And the other thing that bothered me, it was done on a channel that no one knew.
yeah, Wild made it alt, and his only stream was that New World event. Which it never really it made a little sense, but it also didn't. That's why he never streamed anything. I get like
I mean,
his
I get no one.
I get
I don't think he should have streamed that event because like there's
oh that at
Ender
that
Reese has
point,
never
yeah,
had because
yeah,
like at that point it's like none of the wild characters we never got their perspective except for in video format.
yeah,
And I think like there's like a consistency to be kept with that.
right.
Um,
At that point, yeah, especially. Um, and yeah, I get like his concern of what it because the reason Wild never really streamed, at least the reason he told me, was he was afraid his audience kinda at times was not the most mature. I mean, he's a Roblox creator. Roblox,
yeah.
viewers are typically younger. But at the same time, I think it would have benefited greatly to see that perspective.
I mean, like I
Earlier
still get
on.
it because like our subject, like it's not understanding your
I
audience is
get, yeah,
important,
no, I get
and
the
the
concerns
subject
fully. Don't get me
and
wrong.
like the subject matter that we were like delving into was very very mature, especially with the whole death thing
Yeah,
and
especially
grief
as time went
storyline.
on. Yeah,
Um,
it went from your stereotypical power grab versus like resistance type thing to a much darker story, depending on who you watched. Um, and a sort of falling from grace for Flower, and then JO3 trying to live like a normal life, and Flower refusing, blaming all of their problems on JO3. Um, and dude was just trying to work a tavern in a town, but could not happen. Um, which is why I think Enderace is being like more the slowly like just loosening and losing of the mind of Flower would have been probably better than actually being there as a ghost. If there's one change I'd make to the story around that time, it'd probably be that. If I could just make one, just because I think it would have helped solve some issues before they happened, and also still allow Flower to go on the negative arc they did. Although, in my opinion, I mean, it could just be it's a character choice. I think their character was never fully like concrete. Their character would change stream to stream, whether intentional or not. In my opinion, it seemed like it from a viewer's perspective, watching it with either Wild or Herbo, depending on the stream. Usually, we agreed it felt inconsistent, but maybe that was what their Flower was going for.
like I could see the argument for it because Flowers going insane. Like
Mm-hmm.
I understood why it was inconsistent.
At least that was what they should have been doing, is going insane. But yeah,
Like I understood it.
I got it. It wasn't the way I would have portrayed the character, but that's the beauty of different
Having
people.
multiple people, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think if I was in Flowers' case, I probably would have went the same way.
No, I would have done
Um,
what I did with Tyrant Joe when he was losing his shit.
yeah, yeah,
Fully no music. You just hear the man losing his mind, trying to rationalize it.
yeah. Because like the characters that I had that went crazy. Well, I think Flowers it was meant to be more subtle, right? Like it was supposed to
Yeah.
be like an overtime thing because it was supposed to like it was kind of like gaslighting the viewer into not believing Flower was crazy,
Mm,
and that felt like the point.
right.
Um,
I could see that. Yeah. I don't know. It just felt weird to me as a choice, but I mean, it is sort of what it is at this point. the story did not go the way I probably would have taken it anyway, but I think that sort of covers the general thoughts on the story. There's some other sort of issues. There was a lot of writing disagreements, as I said. This really started early on.
Hmm.
If I had to name like a few big issues with New World outside just the story, was how we handled meetings, how we handled build, at least like when it came to really discussing build and how much build something should have versus not. Um, there was a lot of
Inconsistency, a lot, I would
you
say too.
know, yeah, a lot of good moments, but never connecting threads between them, which is a big issue as time went on. Um, and I think one thing, I don't know if it was intentional or not, I doubt it. It always felt like this could have just been a timing thing with meetings being spread. I am gonna call it out though. Every time I got in a meeting, typically with just me and Wild, he had already always talked with Flower, which isn't necessarily inherently a bad thing, but we speak in a chat where Flower could also join, so we could at least discuss it, you know, together instead of them discussing then Wild coming to me. Which I think was a lot of issue. There was a communication issue between all of the writing team and then the writing team and the rest of the players because they were kind of left in the dark at the end, which admittedly I was part of. It was we could have clarified better with what was happening with New World towards the end. Because a lot of them were left in the dark and had to come to one of us afterwards. A lot of them only got one story, which is also an issue, and it
Or no
burned some
stories.
bridges, or none. Yeah, which was a big mistake on the writing team's end. There's a lot of other issues, is probably way less like way more minor, but those are the big ones. So there's a lot of communication issues, which ultimately I think is the main reason it became such a sort of toxic working sort of arrangement. Because to me, this is just my perspective. It felt like because we did votes on a lot of decisions, there was always a two to well at the time 2-0 vote on everything before it's even brought to me. Maybe that I don't think that was meant to be
And
the
then, well,
case, but
yeah, well, like it also came up to the case of since we had the meetings the way we did, Wildflower came up with an idea. It'd be brought to you, then you three would discuss it first, and
well, two of us would
then,
discuss it. But
well, yeah, but like there'd be three people's inputs in before it was even brought to me
yeah,
for
and
like any
it's
discussion.
yeah, and
Um,
generally, this may just be my thinking. It felt sort of like I was getting double teamed at times as well. Anytime we did, there was me, Flower, and Wild in ABC because they were both on board with an idea. I would try to
yeah,
discuss it, be like, give
and like
my input,
it's
but
natural for you to feel like that because you have two people who came to an agreement now, right? They're on an
right,
agreement, so they're going to be pretty sad in that agreement because like, oh, well, I discussed it with someone else.
right,
Um, so you have that, and then to bring it to a third person to then bring that third person to an agreement, then bring it to the fourth person, and like that's why like a lot of things that I tried to argue against, like writing wise, like we're just falling on deaf ears because like sometimes I just VC with just one other person, and they tell me, and then it's like, oh well, we already you know.
yeah,
It'd be like, oh well, Joe and Flower are on board, or it'd be like, oh, Wild and Flower are already on board, and I was like, well, I guess there's no point discussing if they're already on board. I'll just go with it.
right,
And that's how me dying went because I wasn't told that I was dying till like I think the day before. No, it was the day of the stream.
yeah,
Um, I
yeah.
wasn't told.
I think the
Um,
most you were told before then was like, I told you, hey, they're thinking about killing you, and I don't know
no, I
how to
didn't think you
feel.
got to do because I think they talked to he talked like that was decided like a few days before, but like I was like a few days I was like really busy because it was I think
Hmm.
around it was either around yeah it was around midterms.
I no,
Um,
maybe it
it was
was
around my
sooner.
midterms. It
I
was
did.
around my
I feel like I do remember like at one point, maybe it was before it was actually a serious idea pitching like, hey, why they just threw the idea of killing you out there, but it was like way before. I remember you like
it
being
might
like,
have been
what the
way before.
why? I was like, I don't know. I don't think we're not gonna
It
do
might have
it.
been
And
way before,
then
but
it
like
actually came to it. It was like, yeah,
I
what?
was
This is
never
stupid.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's never any conversation with me like about it till like day of, and by that point I was like, oh well, it's too late to change anything. And, like I
yeah,
tried
it
to
was.
argue it, and then like everything I tried to argue was shot down.
Yeah, it didn't
Um,
make. I was I was done at that point. I probably could have backed it up, but it still would have been a two like to two, and then tiebreaker, and then would have caused more fights. I think at that point we both sensed each other were done, so we just went with it. And then what do you know? It ended after that.
No, I wasn't even done till I was told I was dying. I'm gonna be honest.
I was done months beforehand. I made it
Um,
apparent to you, Wild, everybody, even on streams. I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do this. I'm doing it because people enjoy it.
yeah,
Because for a
but
while that
like
was the case, and then it got to the end, and I don't even think people
I
enjoy
think
it
that's the
anymore
thing that made me
based on the view
just
count.
stop caring. It was right then and there.
Right.
Was being told, "Oh, I'm dying." Like, "Oh, well, why?" It's like we could do this, this, and this. If I don't, this person cut off. If I die, it's like, "Oh no, it's fine." And like that's all I was told. It's like, "Oh no, it's fine. We're on board. We have an idea." And then that was like that was the conversation, and I was like, "Okay,
Mm.
fine, whatever." So I died. Um,
Then the server died.
yeah, I died at the same time the server did because everyone stopped playing at that time. And then we tried to get to an ending. I remember, like, I kept pushing chat, like, "Hey guys,
Well, yeah.
let's do
Well,
something."
we were always in VCs. Well, we had
Like,
sort of a plan. You mean Wild got in a VC. We tried to get Flower in. I think they're busy, so
no. So what happened then is I went into mod channel. I finally complained, like, "Hey guys, can you at least at me if you're gonna have a meeting so I can see if I'm at least available because I'm not always
yeah,
like on Discord." And like I think I
right,
was like I used a more annoyed tone because I was annoyed as like
right,
heck.
yeah, okay, I remember that.
Um,
Yeah, and that's
the
fair. Really fair.
and then it was like then we started finally actually having a meeting at the ending for
Yeah.
weeks. Um, finally, uh,
Yeah.
trying to build something up, and from there we uh we had a meeting. It was in text. It was a text chat meeting, and
Hmm.
eventually I was trying to say something to Wild, but me and Wild communicate in two very different styles. To the point, if me and Wild don't like get into a VC and hash it out in VC, like explain the exact thing that I'm saying in VC, then we'll never come to an understanding.
Yes.
Um, and like there's may you could probably ask Wild himself. He could probably agree with that. Um,
Right.
and so you run into that issue right there, where we had the VC. So we were like, okay, let's VC. Real quick. I explained like the only thing discussed in that VC was explaining. Like I will say, we didn't add Flower, which is probably a mistake. But at the same time, the entire point of that VC was just to be like, hey, this is exactly what I meant by this text, right? And then that was all
Yeah.
that meeting was.
Well, it was
No,
yeah, it
no
was
new
really just
ground.
between you and Wild to hash things out, and then I just joined
Yeah,
and we talked for a little bit, but it wasn't about
no,
anything
no new
concrete.
ground was broken
Yeah.
in the slightest. Um,
Yeah. It was still the same kind of plan we had formulated of the wedding and the star. That was what we had. We didn't I guess we didn't have all the key details, but we had the general idea.
yeah.
Yeah. And
And like
then
nothing changed. And then
um
after that, that's when Flowers annoyed that we didn't at them, and I think they mentioned about feeling not heard. I think I'm saying this off memory's faulty. Let me go to New World see the exact complaint.
I yeah. Why you yeah, I think you
I don't
why
want to
you
misquote.
right. Yeah, why you do that? Yeah. I do know that were upset that they weren't added, which is fair enough. My retort was, I mean, we never really got Harpo. We never added Harpo, but whatever.
Um,
But either way, they were both bad, but at the same time, they never really got Harpo involved, and they were never really in VCs anyway. I don't think it crossed our mind, like, after I had joined and we were just talking, and we weren't even talking about New World. It's like, yeah, we probably should have. That's our
yeah.
B.
Okay. So the exact message was, "Hey guys, Wild filled me in on the way you guys want the story." I'm gonna be honest. I think that's a really shitty way to do it. Um, but we
I
didn't say. I don't. I didn't understand where this is coming from.
I didn't either. I
Um,
think we were both just
which
looked
is
at it
why I
around the
wanted
same
to
time and hopped in a VC just to talk. Like, hey, what do you understand? Because I don't understand.
like. This is why I asked I think right after this I asked Flower if they wanted to VC because I didn't understand what they're like getting
You
at.
did, yeah. It was a
Because the
small
only
argument, and then you said, hey, you want to hash this out in a VC?
The only thing that I think, like, I think I said, yeah, want a VC because I was trying to figure out where they were coming from
Right.
because we didn't. The only thing we did was like we're like, hey, we can't use these characters for the ending because there's no connection to them, and that's if if we don't do any build. If we do some build to like connect these characters in, like they
Yeah.
have to have a reason to be in.
Right.
Um, and that was all that was done there. And I made like a week of mine free to do that VC, and then eventually it was dropped.
Yeah. It was just dropped
Because yeah,
for
it was
reasons,
dropped.
I guess.
I don't remember the exact
There
reasons,
was
and
no
I don't feel
reason.
like reading through the wall of text.
There was no reason.
Uh,
I remember that part thoroughly. There wasn't
I
really a
think it
direct
was
reason.
just no. I think Flower said it wasn't that important anymore, or something along those
That was,
lines.
yeah, that was about it.
Um, I
My like main issue with the circumstances, then they came out with their own doc without even consulting any of us before writing it. They consulted Milk, that was it. Which, I mean, Milk wasn't a bad. Milk was part of the idea of their whole even angle, which was good, their marriage angle and everything. But still, you want to consult with the rest of the writing team before probably putting it together. They put it together, basically the exact same ending, but in their words. Um, and then brought it to us, which, I mean, bringing a pitch to us, I guess, inherently isn't bad. And we ultimately kind of just agreed because it was the same exact ending, just worded slightly differently. And I think flushed out the wedding a bit more, which I do give props to. Um, Ultimately, you and me were both done, so it was either way, but it worked. I'm trying to think. There was a VC after that. I'm trying to remember all the details.
was there a VC after that?
There was. We got when we were actually discussing like editing and everything.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. There was one VC after that, and then that was it.
yeah, that was the last one before drama and shutdown. So Flower wanted to edit it. Inherently, I don't care. Sure, my issue, but this isn't really Flower's fault. They had just started editing, like, or learning to edit. My argument was, hey, if we want this to be good, we probably don't know the person that's just started editing to edit it. I think that's a pretty fair reasoning.
I think it's fair. Oh no, I think the compromise because I came up with the compromise.
Yeah, you're the one who came with the
Um,
compromise.
I was like, okay, so Flower, you edit together the Flower's perspective half, right? And then Joe's gonna edit Joe's perspective half, right? And just like leave the transition marks, like oh, this is where the Flower scene would be, and this would be where this scene.
Yeah,
And then
pretty much
I
gonna
was going to
edit
bring it all
half and
together
half. Yeah.
with and do the music for the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like that was the plan.
That was
Um,
what the ultimate plan ended up being. Yeah.
and the only reason why I was like, let me do the music for the I've had classes on that, like telling a digital story is part of my curriculum that I have to learn.
Right.
Um,
And yeah, I was okay with
and
that.
part of that is music choice. So I was like,
Yeah.
hey, let me do it. I go to school for this.
Yeah.
Um,
I was okay with that because at least it went through two people with different levels of editing experience more than just beginning, which isn't Flower's fault. It was literally just because they just started editing that I was skeptical and didn't really want to do just that. Um, and I think the ultimate compromise would have been fine had we finished everything and the server hadn't necessarily shut down when it did. I think what the plan would have been fine enough. Um, we were ultimately the other discussion. I think probably a bit before then was where to put it because I think one of us, someone pitched it to be on someone's Twitch channel. I argued it to be premiered on the YouTube channel as the big finale, which I think made more sense.
I
I
was on
think,
the YouTube side.
yeah,
Mainly just because it's like I think we do on one channel if it was one person's perspective, but based on the way that it was being edited,
it wasn't.
um,
Yeah.
it wasn't. Another idea thrown around was to do it in like two separate separate parts.
Oh yes. Oh, somebody wanted two
And
separate
then
parts, and then
the argument for that is like they're separate enough. The argument gets as like, well, the story's still intertwined.
the stories so intertwined and both would feel way less impactful should they be separated.
Yeah.
It should
Oh,
not
plus then
make a
only one
finale two
like
parts.
then one
Yeah,
part gets more views than the
yeah.
next
The
part,
ult-
and not everyone gets the whole story.
yeah, and then the ultimate decision was premiere on the YouTube channel, and then anyone who wants to live react could live react. That gets the most views possible if that's what you're worried about. You get the YouTube premiere viewers, and then anyone else's audience could go to it. And that was the
Yeah,
ultimate plan with that, with the three editor cycle type of thing.
that New World ended, and that was the end of it.
Then New World ended, and that was the end of it. And then that gave us 8 pages of unused or scrapped New World SP ideas,
Yeah,
which I'm staring at on my other monitor.
I
Uh,
don't want to go through that.
no, I'm gonna leave it in the
God.
description if anyone does want to go through it. I'm not. We mentioned we mentioned a decent amount, honestly, just talking about it. But there's still a whole lot more in there. You get like a paragraph rant from Harpo about me not killing
You get a
Wild.
more concise rant about Joe being the
Yeah,
right one to kill Wild.
and a couple thoughts in between. Yeah, it's well, it's about 7 pages, not 8 pages, about 6.5 probably of ideas. Almost 7 pages. Which just different levels. Some of them were literally just ideas that were done and just tossed aside, never planned to be implemented. Some of them were. Some of them were started. Some of them were like
For
decently
season
fleshed
2.
out. Some of them were for season 2, as well. It's just a scramble. We just put it together one night, talking about it just to see. There was not nearly this for the two other SMPs. Timeline wise, story idea. And I think that honestly it's just because there were so many different ideas and perspectives on what to do with New World SMP.
I think also like there's so many different like massive changes to like plan.
Yes.
Um,
I
I think
think
that affected a lot of it.
yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing besides communication issues is that half of the server and half the writing team, I guess, if we wanted to dumb it down to just two less people, I feel like wanted to take it in a direction that focused on New World story and not its predecessors, while the other half, me and you, wanted to make sure that it was a concise finish to a trilogy of SMPs timeline-wise, which I do need to clear this up for the one person that was confused, even though it's a few months late. Ender Falls and JO3 SMP are not like a sequel or a prequel to each other. They are two separate stories that converge with New World SMP. They do not connect whatsoever until you reach New World, and along with any other unknown SMPs, like from where Lunar and Smokey were from or wherever. None of them connect until they reach New World. New World is a interesting case of a bunch of SMPs pretty much being pushed together. We never really got to explore that. That was probably more of what we should have done instead of just drama between two parties the entire time. And that was probably the
I
direction
mean,
I
hey,
would have
I
taken it.
try to go that direction. I
That
was trying to make
was
that was like because I think we had a meeting about like wanting to do more side stories, and my plan for more side stories was to like do deep dives on characters and like where they're from and like their experiences
mm,
to like give backstories to a lot of these characters.
yeah. Well,
Um,
that would have been the direction I'd taken it. Where if I had been like the sole writer, like I kind of was on Joe SMP, and Ender Falls for a little bit, but not really. Mostly just Joe SMP would have been
yeah,
exploring the world more and where everyone came from, type of thing. Wild would have been the antagonist for longer, and the race is like a plan. That one was out of our hands, but that's specific circumstance. But that was gonna kind of be the idea. Was the world was gonna be more fleshed out. There was not just necessarily two sides, and there was a lot more gray area on both sides, morally, and like for motivations, and for the different characters a part of each side. Uh, that wasn't the way it happened because different writers with different ideas, um, and different writers with their own pros and cons they brought to the story. What happened? I mean, was fine enough. A lot of people enjoyed it, and that's good. If you enjoyed New World, that's good. This is meant to just open the discussion to anyone else, should they want to. This isn't
yeah,
meant to
and the
necessarily
show
bash anyone. I gave
really
praise
to
to
like
sorry, you can go.
yeah. Well, I mean, I was gonna just say yeah that we are that seriously is why I'm just playing Siege in the background.
Well, we've talked about it enough beforehand that we got most of our very negative thoughts out that were just somewhat irrational sometimes, just thinking about it. Um, Generally, like, I would want to give praise to everyone who was a part. I have my issues with some of them, like with their the way of storytelling or whatever, which I've mentioned, but everyone also brought a lot to the table and did a really good job with their roles. We didn't necessarily have to agree on everything, which is fine. It's something that is part of life, and I honestly want to wish them all luck on their projects. And I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it, Harpo Gaming. I want to wish Flower and them luck on Lucid SMP. They did pull a Joe SMP and just like started up while Ender Falls or their equivalent New World was going on. But you know what? I'm happy they seem to have something going. And I wish them the best of luck. I hope it succeeds, honestly. I don't know anything about it. All I know is I watched like a video and Wild Aces was in it. So that was cool. Best of luck to them. We got Forgotten Falls going on. If you want to check that out, if I remember, I'll put it in the description. Forgotten
Block
Falls
News is
is
the best way
different.
to keep up with Forgotten Falls. To be
It
fair,
is. Where's Blocks News episode 4, Harpo Gaming?
well, as of recording this, I'm actually working on. Need you to wait meeting.
Okay. Well, in that case,
Block
check.
News episode 4 will be out by the time this goes out, probably.
Oh, definitely, it's going out next Monday.
Okay, yeah, it'll be out. Go check out Block News.
Yeah. If I remember, I'll link that in the description specifically. Yeah, New World, Forgotten Falls SP is a new SP, very different style. Something everyone seems to have enjoyed a lot. If you're a creator and wanna apply, if I remember, I'll put that in the description as well. If not, if you go watch Blogs News, it'll be in that description probably.
Block News, baby.
Yeah. It covers a lot of the events on there. There's a political side to it, so it's a more mature server. So if that isn't your, foray, that's fine. I understand different audiences. If not, then you can still check out the creators' independent content as well. And not everyone's really into that on the server. There's a lot of creators who are just playing survival and doing their thing. That's just, one aspect of the server. I think we pretty much covered everything, unless you have any other thoughts you want to give, Mr. Gaming, about New World SMP before we put it to bed, at least between me and you. Like I said, everyone else can discuss it if they choose to. That is every creator and former members, it's up to them. I hope this, I hope no one really takes offense to this podcast. It was really just meant to discuss it. I do wish everyone well who was a part of New World. Whether they would say the same to me, that's different, and that's fine, because you can like who you want and dislike who you want. That's fine. I do wish them all well, and I wish all of you well, and thank you for watching. Like I said, I think this is the longest podcast so far.
Well, we have a lot to cover.
It's kind of close. It really depends how I edit it. If it is the longest or not. Mr. Gaming, do you want to shout out anything? I may as well, since you probably won't be on for a bit. No one on our schedules.
I shout out everything last week, so
so just go watch that podcast. Oh, clearly,
go watch
you have another
podcast.
hour and a half, right?
Yeah.
Go listen to that one. Hopefully, it'll be on Spotify soon. But
I guess I can shout out some things I'm working on. Yeah. Obviously, shout out Streamers for Mental Health. Thing I care a lot about.
Yeah.
If you're wondering why I have a random level 3 siege account with just a recruit, because I'm working on a video of getting ranked. So that video
is just working on a video technically while doing this.
Yeah, but check that out when it goes out. And watch Block News, maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. Check all that out. Streamers Mental Health, our page through the Jed Foundation will be in the description if you wish to donate. That I'll make sure to remember, because that one's important. That's all, really. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see these and some other shorter videos in between. We're hoping to get up on Spotify now that I'm back from my trip. I'm hoping by the time the next episode's recorded, I'll be on Spotify. Hopefully. Knowing Joe, it might take a little bit because Joe is slow.
I hate you.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Check out the main channel if you want. It kind of exists sometimes too. That's about it. So, thank you for watching. See you next week, baby.